All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. We're just a bunch of Kiss fans and we talk Kiss. So come along for the ride. You've got nothing to lose.
All right, that was a brief infomercial for the forthcoming 1980 Mask Hysteria Revisited. That's going to be out at the end of the month. So head on over to Kiss in Japan or Kiss on Tour 74 to 83.com for further information. Ordering bundles are available for Alan's last publication. Welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host, Jillian Gill. We've got Lonnie.
What's up? Back.
We got Marcus Almighty.
Greetings.
We got Ken.
Hey.
Oh, he's off mute. Oh, awesome.
I'm
All
not
right. So
muted.
you're
Sorry,
not
headphones.
muted. Thank you for joining us live today. Just a couple of things. As I intimated, that was for the audio version of the show that'll go up later. The infomercial for Mask Hysteria Revisited, which was announced the other day. Obviously, very excited to have this given the InDesign touch, the professional designer review, and focusing it down into 1980. Thank you, Elaine, for being interested in doing something with the out-of-print title as part of the celebration of Unmasked. It, of course, also comes with, or also available, pardon me, is a new newsletter, number 11, which I'm sure will be very cool. And if you're interested in bundles and haven't picked up Budokan, Elaine's Budokan book is still available as well, so you can save on postage on that. So check it out. There's a separate infomercial with lots of information about that. Also coming out this week, it came out on Wednesday, was Chapter 4 of Audio Odyssey, with all the documents and accoutrements added in for visual proof of what I'm talking about. So thank you to everyone who's checked that out. Share my post, please. Get the word out about this if you enjoyed it. I'd love to broaden the audience for these, especially with Chapter 5 coming up. Chapter 5 is digging into the elderfication of the project. Chapter 4 ends in June as the band returns from Vienna and picking up a award, and then the shit hits the fan, proverbially. And I'm going to have some fun with Chapter 5. It may be in two parts, because part one, of course, will be the narrative with the memos and the story, and also tracking down what these guys have said about how the Elder Project actually turned into what it did. And then I'm doing the script, and I'm going to use some AI voices because they've come along far enough technology-wise, and I'm not a voice actor, and I'm certainly not going to go union and hire a bunch of actors for something for a podcast of this scale. So here's just a little taste of what may be coming in Chapter 5. And this is just one section of the real Elder script.
There is night mist on the long rolling lawn that leads to the cloisters, and the sounds of night are all around. From within, behind the massive ancient door, we hear a muffled bell tolling and the eerie chanting of monks. We track in across the lawn on the sound of footsteps in the grass, and as we do, the chant grows louder. At the front steps, the sound of shoes on grass shifts jarringly to the scraping of soles on cement. We stop at the portal and raise the knocker, a giant iron ring at the bottom of which a rose is wrought, and let it fall. First, it issues a low groan, and then a resounding thud fills the cloisters and the night. The door is opened, and the chanting is instantly louder as we creak in an old man's shoes down an echoing hallway towards the great chamber. At the doorway, our footsteps stop, and from the right comes a soft, eldritch voice.
All right, that was one way to kill the audience right at the beginning of the show. But yeah, the script, I mean, Tim originally managed to obtain the actor script, and that was strictly what they took into the studio to record. I later got the full treatment of where that was extracted from, and I want to turn that into an audio type thing with some of the, background effects. I want to just get off on, an artistic thing. I mean, this is a coloring book for me, using Bob Bob Ezrin's palette of paints from the Sonic realm. So I'm going to have fun with that. It'll either be a clusterfuck or it may be a disaster. So one of the two. It should be entertaining. All right. Anyone bought any Kiss stuff this week?
I did. Believe it or not, I'm the one who usually
Mark,
doesn't.
wait, hold it. Breaking news. Mark bought some Kiss stuff this week.
Yes.
Wow.
I actually bought, and not with not any intention of buying anything. So I went into my local record store and I was looking around for stuff, and then all of a sudden something caught me the corner of my eye, and I said, "Okay, now that I saw this, I thought I had to buy this." So I bought two different ones, but you'll see. One is Kiss related, the other is not. But here's the Kiss related thing: Kiss socks. Okay, I found these. Yeah, these are fantastic. They fit really cool. They have like, this is just one of the designs on there. They have there's like 3 different pairs that you get in there. They fit fantastic. They're awesome socks. And then right beside there, in tribute to the man, I also have to get a pair of these, the Ozzy Osbourne socks.
Oh.
Okay, so they have a couple of designs there as well. So I got myself a pair of Kiss socks. Well, 3 pairs. And 3 pairs of Ozzy socks. So don't say I don't buy anything from Kiss.
You're a regular Ace Frehley. Next, we'll be seeing pictures of your feet up on the dashboard. I bought some shit. I bought a box full of cassettes just to go through and see if there are any upgrades to anything that I've got.
Nice.
A few interviews so far that I've listened to that I don't recall. I did look up on that hard drive, and some of them were there. And some of them were there in worse quality. So at least for me, there'll be some upgrades there. And these things come in very handy, particularly with the things that I kind of do the most. Lonnie, have you had any time to do any Kiss shopping?
No, my Asylum came, I guess it was last week, I guess. And it was, Julian, I saw that yours came a little damaged. Mine luckily did not. But,
I got my refund.
Well, that's good.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I had to chase them 2 days after they'd received it back. I was like, "Yo, where's my refund?" And bingo.
I haven't bought any Kiss stuff, but I've sold some Kiss stuff though.
Sold?
I've seen that.
You've seen me sell some stuff.
I've seen you listen to those records. Ken.
Certain records I have sold out of my collection. I'm slowly selling certain ones. I'm not gonna sell everything, but certain things that I just feel, I don't. Some of it's just for collectability kind of thing. You need to have that certain, release vinyl or whatever. I don't feel I need some of those anymore. Certain ones, so I've been slowly selling some of them, letting them go to some people who want to, add to their Kiss collection. So,
are you keeping OG stuff, or are you getting rid of the?
I'm not getting. Yeah, I'm really well. I'm keeping like definitely my promotional copies of my studio albums.
Mm-hmm.
Though I've let go some of the promo copies, like the EPs. And stuff like that too. Like those samplers. I've sold a couple of those things, and So I'm slowly. I sold some picture discs. Like The Elder, for instance, and like Creatures of the Night. These are the ones from Europe or whatever.
The Netherlands ones there,
yeah, those ones. I've been slowly kind of getting certain things out of my collection, kind of trying to bring it down a little bit.
Manageable sort of thing.
Yeah, more manageable, if you can call it that.
All right. Well, today's topic, and I hope our title for the show doesn't offend anyone by us using the word transitions. If it does, well, Buttercup, go into your safe space, because we're talking about Kiss transitions. And this is simply the change between style and sound in between Kiss albums. And this was started out as a thread on the FAQ by Corey, I think it was, Hori Pro, which back-to-back studio albums had the biggest change between, and he listed between two groups, Unmasked versus The Elder, Carnival of Souls versus Psycho Circus. And I'm like, no, we need to do the whole damn catalog, but we have to do it as a ranking in order to frame the conversation. So these poor guys got this long list of shit, a lot of writing, and had to think about it in order to come up with a ranking. So first of all, let's define what each of us, or how each of us interpret, that change and how you approached ranking, providing your rankings, and then we'll get into all of the rankings as well. So explain how you define change in this context, Mark.
Well, for me, usually, a lot of it with me has to do with sonics. Excuse me, like how it sounded, record to record, production wise. I mean, certain things affected it overall, and let's face it. A lot of the times, when a person listens to a record the first time, the first thing that they immediately catches their attention is how it sounds before they get any deeper into lyrics and songwriting structures and stuff like that. It's like, oh, this sounds either really good or it sounds really bad, or it just sounds like in the middle or whatever. So I kind of based my ranking on sound, and then a bit of it also in songwriting structure as well. Like, did they keep within the sort of framework that I enjoy with Kiss songs? Or did they step out of that? If they did step out of it, did I enjoy the moving out of that area, or did I not? So that's kind of how I looked at it.
Lonnie, were you in the office when you said, do we have to do any work for this?
I was sitting at my desk when I commented, you mean we got to do homework for tomorrow's episode?
Oh, no.
I was like, I don't have time for that right now. But before I stayed in the deck this morning, I did a quick little ranking thing and sent it to Julian. So I got my homework done on time. But when I did it, I thought about just style and sound. It's one of the great things about being a Kiss fan is that there are so many different styles and sounds to the band over the years. You could listen to Hotter Than Hell and then listen to Asylum and love them both, or Crazy Nights and love them both. But there are different styles and different sounds, and and we talk about chasing trends and things like that, and you can definitely, when you sit down and look at that, you can definitely see the jump from one album to the next. Like, oh wow, they really changed what they were looking for, or they changed like the audience they were targeting when they jumped from this album to the next. So it was a fun little exercise, and I enjoyed it. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys did as well.
Yeah, Ken, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys, actually. Definitely, like Mark said, the sonics is a thing. Sonics style of music. It's not when Kiss has changed their styles from heavy to light, or vice versa, and that sort of thing. It's not like AC/DC where it never changes. Something like that. So it's just more about that, this style more than anything else. The style and the sonics combined.
Yeah, so none of you said anything about Image.
I wouldn't throw Image into it, really.
So you're all listening with your ears and not with your eyes. And
I don't. Yeah,
for the most part, yeah.
That's why we're Kiss fans, and that's why the other people don't like Kiss. They're not Kiss fans.
Yeah, no, I think the observation about how broad Kiss's catalog is in terms of its style is really interesting. Now, I framed this, I included studio sessions as the separator. So with the exclusion of Alive and Alive 2, which of course were studio sessions as well. But I did include Kiss Killers as a transitional studio session, as it was a completely different entity in terms of purpose and studio and sounds. And I also included Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, even though that was a very kind of convoluted one in Britain. It was, well, part of it was recorded in New York, some in Britain. And then Alive 2. The studio album side of that was a separate session. So that skews the conversation somewhat slightly, because all of a sudden you're going from Elder to Creatures if you're not. But if you throw Killers in between that, that kind of breaks the dynamic. And I think that's deliberate to the way I was thinking about framing this conversation, because you have to be honest to the stylistic steps that are being taken throughout the catalog. But again, this whole thing just made me think, my goodness, there's really at the Kiss Sonic buffet, there really is something for every taste. And that is just so cool from this band. And Max, yeah, AC/DC is bigger, but AC/DC doesn't have the variety. They had a love song in 1974, and then nothing after. So they had one time that they really got outside their box, and then they just stayed in it, and that box shrank more and more. Have you seen those freaking AC/DC t-shirts now? It's only Angus and Brian on the front. Okay, that's like I've been triggered. All right, so
familiar conversation.
Yeah, so I had everyone on the panel provide their top 6. I figured we'd whittle it down to 5, but I think we can probably go with all 7 that we actually came up with. In 7th, did I say 6?
Yeah, he said 6.
Yeah, I had you guys do 6 in hopes of doing 5, but instead we have enough to do 7. So this panel has ranked in 7th place on 4 points. So who voted for this? Oh, me and Lonnie. The transition between Carnival of Souls and Psycho Circus. Why do you think that's a big transition, Lonnie?
Well, we're trying at the time. They're chasing a trend with Carnival of Souls, trying to be grungy in a sense, and Carnival just sounds so different than a lot of other Kiss albums, and Carnival was when, like, in 1994, 95, they're advertising Carnival to be like, pick up where Revenge left off kind of album. And while Hate picks up where Revenge left off, a lot of the album afterwards is just very grungy and chasing trends. And but then you jump to Psycho Circus, and it's like, oh, now we're more poppy, and we want to be we're chasing this sound all of a sudden. We want to be poppy, and it really kind of sounds like an 80s album, and it's kind of it is a mixed bag. I agree with the commenter who just said that, but it's also we want to be a happy-go-lucky, like, look at us, kumbaya type of album that really falls flat. So the transition from Carnival being down and grungy to, oh, we're happy-go-lucky and we're back and look at us is a big jump, in my opinion. And even though Within is a leftover from that, you still have the Dark Gene song, but they're trying to have the Dark Gene song, I guess you could say, because Within just kind of doesn't do it for me a whole lot, and you can see why I was left off Carnival. But it's a big jump from what they were trying to do with Carnival, being down and grungy and tough, to, oh, look at us with Ace and Peter, we're up here now, and kumbaya, we're back together.
Yeah, I find it interesting though.
Been on that album.
I find it interesting.
If only Ace and Peter had been on Psycho Circus.
True.
All of it.
But I just wanted to say that I find it interesting though that pick. But I mean, the one thing that stood out immediately is that look at who produced each. Toby Wright, who did like Korn and all that stuff at that time, did Carnival, and then you had Bruce Fairbairn, who has done all those big records back in those Aerosmith and all those other records that he did at the time. And it's obvious what they were looking for in both records.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I have that on just because it is such a jarring stylistic shift between here we are where we're chasing trends, we're trying to follow up Revenge, so we're trying to stay true to what we've done with Revenge, but we're also chasing Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and the new emerging sounds, which are really alien to, you know, the mentality of people who were directly inspired by the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Cream, and Blue Cher, and MC5, you know, etc. It's the opposite. It's a generation. They're trying to jump generations here. So when they get to Psycho Circus, they're trying to wind back the clock in a certain extent to Dress to Kill. They're trying to recapture that kind of vibe without the capability, because it's too late. You can't go back and capture it. So Bruce Fairbairn, as the Doctor, who had done so much for difficult groups like Aerosmith and Bon Jovi, you know, was completely the wrong guy for that. But in terms of the album sound, it was more than a 180 away from Carnival of Souls. It was like going back to Crazy Nights, in essence. Ken, you didn't have Cause. You didn't have Psycho Circus.
I was close to having that. Probably would have been the next on my list, maybe. Yeah, I see, where that can be put in there. It is quite a change, going from a grunge type sound to that. I think the only reason I didn't put it or didn't get as high as my top 6 is because of it still had that Within kind of thing. You know, that was like a Carnival of Souls kind of sounding song and so on. That's the only reason it didn't go higher on my list among the other ones.
All right, well, moving into 6th place in this ranking is the dynamic change between the studio side of Alive 2 and Dynasty, with 6 points. And that's, again, because 2 of you voted for that. Lonnie, that just came in at the tail end of your list.
It did. I was, I was, waffling back and forth if I was going to put that in there, but I ended up, putting it in there in my 6th spot because it is a change. I feel like where the studio side of Alive 2 kind of piggybacks off of Love Gun. It has a very Love Gun feel to it with the way the band sounds, and they're kind of at their peak at that point, popularity wise, and you even may say, musical wise and stylistic wise too. And then Dynasty, then after the solo albums in the Dynasty, it is a transition, where, let's not hide the elephant in the room. With I Was Made for Loving You, that's a big jump from Rocket Ride and All American Man and Rocket in the USA to the lead track of a disco type track of I Was Made for Loving You. I know the rest of the album, has some great more rock style tunes to it, but the Vinnie Poncia production of that album and more of a poppy feel to that album is a big jump from what we got off that studio side of Alive 2, where, I still feel Kiss is really kind of true to who they are on that studio side of Alive 2. And it's really maybe the first time you really see Kiss starting to chase trends and things like that, when you get the Dynasty. Now, while Dynasty does have some good rock tunes, it is a stylistic shift from where they were. And that's why they alienated, some of the more hardcore Kiss fans with that transition.
Yeah. And
other than that one, sorry, Mark.
No, I was just going to say that the one thing I noticed also too is that there's a big difference in that Ace only appears on like one song on the studio side of Alive 2, and then on Dynasty he is very present in 3 songs written on there, and it's it's interesting how much that had a factor as well. I think he definitely added an element in there that I really enjoyed on that record.
Yeah, and Todd just kind of echoed your sentiment. What a difference Ace's 1978 solo album makes between Alive 2 and Dynasty. It's absolutely, it's nuts, the difference. He was really empowered by the time 79 came around. But going back to the rankings, the only reason this is really in the rankings is because Ken gave this 5 points or something nuts.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was number 2 on my list. I thought, I mean, come on, Alive 2 is like an awesome sounding. Those cuts on there are so good. And excuse me, when they went to Dynasty, that is such a drastic change in style. First of all, it's like what do you call that? Hard, not hard rock, but
Hard right.
pop rock, or what do you want to call it? And the disco element of "I Was Made for You, Love You," "I Was Made for Loving You," and "Dirty Livin'," and some of the other sounds on there. It's just a total different sound for them, and that's I ranked it so high is because that's where they lost a lot of people. They lost a lot of fans going from their Love Gun Live 2, and that we know the solo albums had an effect too, but definitely that really made a big deal, big effect on the fans and how they viewed Kiss. That was no longer the Kiss that they loved, and that was pretty much the end of it. So that was such a drastic change. I just, it's so.
But you know what though? I find that fascinating that you say that, because to me, when I hear the side 2, while there's some great songs on it, I find there's also some really weak stuff on there. Like "Rockin' in the USA" is terrible. That's like a horrendous song on that, and the cover as well is like. Now that gets back to my analyzing the songs songwriting wise, not so much just sonically. Now I'm talking about also songwriting, and that's just some bad stuff there.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of songs there, but it's more about what Kiss is and Kiss should be. Even though they did cover songs, those are just added songs on there. They threw on there to complete the Live 2, project.
"Rockin' in the USA."
I don't think all those songs would have been on there had they recorded a full album instead of a Live 2. Those extra, I just don't think they would have made the cut. But it's just more, it's more sonically, it's more, the heaviness, the dangerousness was still there on Alive 2, those cuts, but the no more danger on Dynasty. It's like we're just we're becoming that kids.
Do you think danger is still a thing then with them? I mean, I think they lost the danger a long time.
Original, yeah, they still had a little bit of it, of course. Destroyer kind of screwed things up there too, and we'll probably get to that, I'm sure. So anyway, that's the main thing, is the direction, the production. It was, and their loss of fans, a lot of fans during that period of time.
Yeah, they had enough songs to do an album in late '77. Suspended Animation. Gene had a song called "Rock and Roll Over," which would have been weird coming after the album had come out. And he had Jailhouse Rock on his list as well. I can't remember the other ones, but they had more than enough to do an album. But they were holding back their material. All right, let's move into 5th place. And I'm surprised this is so far down the list, because I kind of thought it'd be higher, and then I looked at how I voted for it. So on 8 points, Asylum to Crazy Night. So you go from New York City hard rock into whatever the heck you want to describe Crazy Night as. Mark, let's start with you for Asylum.
Yeah, I put it as my 5th one. I mean, to me, it is a pretty jarring, not jarring maybe, but it is a definite change. I mean, to me, Asylum, while it is very much trying to appease the MTV generation, at least visually at that time, musically, I think it's excellent. I mean, like I've said it 1,000 times, and same with Julian. I mean, that's our favorite non-makeup sort of album from Kiss, for me at least. Sure, I can say that without any hesitation. Like that, I just think it has a great sound. Paul was on his game at that time. I mean, even Gene's songs on there, you know, when this is considered still his kind of absenteeism era, those songs are still pretty good, and they match up good with Paul's songs on here. And I've always thought that it still had enough of that sort of edginess to it that even still, while they still tried to make an MTV quote unquote type album, they still retained enough of the original DNA to make it very good, in my opinion. And then when they went to, you know, Crazy Nights, they went for the high polished look. They pulled out the buffers and all that stuff out and tried to make it very shiny and clean. And, you know, they had Ron Nevison, who did Ultimate Sin, and he did the Hard album, and he did a bunch of stuff that went multiple platinum. So they were like seeing dollar signs in their eyes when they saw him come into the studio. I mean, they didn't do anything for a year just to wait for the guy. That's got to tell you something, right? So, and it just was too much of worrying about making a commercially successful record where they lost a lot of the elements that I thought were so strong on the prior record. That to me was too much of a change for me, at least. I thought it was just, you know, just terrible that way. So, yeah, I didn't like that change at all.
Yeah, so this just scraped in at the bottom of my list, and that was just because the other ones kept bumping it down in terms of order. But I'll just say this for the transition between Asylum and Crazy Nights. This is the only transition between Kiss albums that ever made me cry. And putting in that Crazy Nights tape and pressing play and getting to Bang Bang You just left me freaking tears. It was not what I wanted as a Kiss fan, as a budding Kiss fan, because I wasn't solidified at that point. I loved Asylum. I loved the kind of edge to that. It was very, you know, I guess underproduced. It just, in a way, it's allowed to be legit and real. And Crazy Nights just has everything polished off it. But as I've said in recent years, I've reappraised it since doing the Danger Zone book, and I like performances on it, if not the production. And it certainly is no Ultimate Sin. It is no Heart album. It is a dud in terms of delivery and execution. Lonnie, where did you put this on your list?
I had it 5th on my list as well. You know, just kind of rounding out the list a little bit. I mean, there is a definite shift. And again, it's a chasing trend type of shift where I think Asylum, you know, they're a little more true to themselves with what they are and how they want the band, how they really want the band to be and how they wanted the band to sound in the 80s. And I think they got off that tour, or they were on tour, and then they were looking around at what was popular and what other bands like Bon Jovi were doing and seeing how successful it was. And they just kind of looked at each other and said, yeah, that's what we need to do. That's what's popular. So that's the direction we need to go. And you can hear it just, you know, from songs like King of the Mountain and Tears Are Falling and any, you know, anything off of Asylum to what you get off of Crazy Nights. It's a definite shift with more keyboards and more, you know, there are innuendo songs on Asylum, but there's more innuendo songs on Crazy Nights, and just trying to chase what we're doing, and just the look of Asylum. Okay, Asylum's cover isn't the best. We'll all agree on that. Yeah. But then you look at the back of Crazy Nights with the blue thong. You're like, what are we doing? You know, who are we trying to be? Like we're
girls.
We're right. We're definitely chasing something here, and I don't know what it is. So, you know, there's a definite shift in the image. We're definitely pushing a certain image at that point with that transition with not just musically, but visually as well.
Someone wanted to be David Coverdale.
Right.
Yeah. For me, it's fell off number 4 on my list. Yeah, I agree with all of you guys. I remember when it came out, Crazy Nights, and I first heard the Crazy Night single, one way and one manner, I thought, oh, this is very, kind of slick and Bon Jovi-ish almost, right? And the other thing I was thinking at the same time is, oh, they're trying to get a hit single. They're trying to get on. I understand. I wanted them to have a hit single, but it's not the right move to just try to go for that. Just be true to yourself. The other thing about the production is they should have stuck really, to a producer that understands Kiss. And the producers that understand Kiss, well, the one that understands Kiss more than anyone else is Eddie Kramer. And they should have just kept him or tried to bring him back into the fold, even in the 80s, even though I don't know what it would sounded like, but I think it would have been better as far as the production and sound of the Kiss albums, definitely.
He wasn't making any big records, though, then. That's the big thing, right?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Paul Stanley is the one that wanted Neverson. Gene did not want to go that direction. He did not want to go that.
Surprising, considering that he's the one who wants the money all the time.
He wants the money, but he knew it wasn't, I guess, true to the sound. So anyway, it was just a big mistake. It's an okay album, of course, has some good stuff on it, but yeah, we've talked about it before. The production is just too slick.
Yeah, but Gene was giving away his best songs, and Paul wasn't allowing his best songs on albums. I think Asylum, in a way, I think sounds like what Eddie Kramer would have done. It's very unproduced. It's just engineered. Yeah. Again, he's not really a producer. Yeah. I think some of the things that I have heard Eddie Kramer overpolish stuff, and Frelly's Comet's a good example of an album that should have been left more raw and more purely engineered, because that's got a sheen of polish on it from the mid 80s, just as bad in some ways as Crazy Night. So let's move on to the next album in our ranking on 13 points. So clear separation now starting to happen, and this one is the transition between Hot in the Shade and Revenge. We can only start with Lonnie on this.
Okay. Obviously, that was my number one, was the transition from Hot in the Shade to Revenge. Big shocker. You go from this 15, I don't know how many damn songs are on Hot in the Shade, too damn many, to Revenge with, you go from Hot in the Shade with squeezing as much as you can on an album. I don't care how crappy the song is, like more songs, more is not better. And then it's Hot in the Shade is poppy, and it's all over the place. From we just need an album, so here's a bunch of songs, and I don't care how bad some of them are or how cringeworthy some of them are. To Revenge, where we definitely had more focus, we definitely had a style that we were going to push. We had a direction. Thank you, Mark. We had an image we wanted. We had a sound we wanted, and it was more focused. And in my opinion, we shot straight up and got it right finally for an Unmasked era. So the biggest jump in my opinion is you listen to Hot in the Shade and listen to Revenge. It's startling.
Yeah, I put this one high up my list as well for this transition. And just in the background where my background fading is fading out, you can see the Les Paul, or it's the Epi. But that's my down tune guitar. And I had that out yesterday to play Revenge shit. So I was trying to figure out, do you want to touch me now? Because I love the opening riff to that one. took about 5 seconds to figure it out, but it was really fun. Yeah, you know what? It's a massive change. And I'm not going to bash on Hot in the Shade, because living in Singapore at the time, I loved that variety. I loved that amount of material. But it really was a schizophrenic hodgepodge of just dump everything onto an album and hope for the best. Revenge was much more focused. It was a big change. Sonic-wise, the dynamics of that album, that was perfectly produced in some ways. I wanted to kind of do a separate topic on this, and we'll probably will after next week's show, and that is one of the other board topics this week was, what would Revenge have been like without Vinnie Vincent? Take those 4 co-writes out. Yeah. And that's there are, Do You Want to Touch Me Now is obviously one. There are other songs that didn't make it. Some are on Gene's vault, and some of them are not discussed in public. So that would be a fun topic down the road. But back to this topic, Ken, you had this one where on your list? Did it even
number 5? Number 5.
Yeah. You marked this pretty low.
I thought of Lonnie, and I thought, I better put that on there. So, the hits. That was how many songs on there? 15. I don't know how many. They crammed everything on it, because this is when they stopped producing vinyl, the end of the vinyl era, the first era, I guess you could say. And there wasn't a lot of vinyl albums produced, and the CD was the big thing, and everyone, we can fit so many songs on the CD now. Let's put everything, let's fill it up with all the songs. Well, that wasn't a good idea. You don't want to fill it up with songs that are undercooked, which is what this album's kind of mostly is. Undercooked. It's demos type material. It's not doesn't sound great if you compare it to even though we talked about Crazy Nights, the Crazy Nights production is a lot better in a way than. It's kind of a flat sounding record. Hot in the Shade, so it's kind of weird. But going from hits to Revenge, Hot in the Shade to Revenge is such a drastic. It's similar to that experience that I had when going from the Elder, not the Killers, because I know Julian threw those extra things in there and it screwed everything up. But
wow, it's a shot at Julian from left field. Wow.
Next you'll be mocking my man.
From behind the grassy knoll, Ken.
Grassy knoll, yes. I was under the bridge. Anyway.
No, he just walked up and right in front of me, Lonnie, and popped me. He didn't need a grassy knoll. That was a headshot. No
warning. It reminded me of when we went from the Elder to Creatures of the Night. It's like, oh wow, they're back. This is it. This is so great. So it was similar to that. Like Kiss is back. It's like, wow, they made a great sounding, great album. Unholy, all that stuff happens. Like, whoa, this is quite a good direction in the style and sound, and the change to kind of a grittier Kiss again. So that was a big deal for me, and I know why it's on Lonnie's, but I know why it's on mine, because of the drastic. It was the right move to do that, even though it didn't do that great in the end. It was still the right move.
I'm glad you know why it's on your list. That's really useful. That's good. All right, Mark, this scraped in at the bottom of. You found this the least. I thought that was odd, actually.
It's interesting, because now in retrospect, maybe I should have put it a bit higher. But the thing is, this album back and forth here is very interesting. I mean, you have one album where they were just, directionless is the best word with it. I mean, I remember reading parts of the book where they were saying Gene was haggling on a daily basis for cheap rates for getting blank tape and stuff. This Hot in the Shade was a complete cutting corners album in every way imaginable, whether it's buying material, the material that they wrote, everything was just complete. I mean, they don't even have Eric Carr drum on some of it. It's like drum machine instead of Eric on there, which goes to show you how, again, no direction on there. I mean, it's just a mishmash of things, and they just needed to put a record out because they were so in need of money. They had to put an album out just to keep ends go, keep their lights on and so on and so forth. So and it sounds that way. I mean, a lot of those songs shouldn't have made it. Everybody, there are people here saying, imagine if Bob did this and that. 90% of that stuff wouldn't even have made it on the album if it was on, if he was in control of it. I can guarantee you that. And Revenge, though, again, and coming from somebody who doesn't like Bob's involvement with Kiss, Revenge turned out fantastic because he did exactly what he needed to come in and say, listen, this is crap. Let's just work on this, work on that. And all the songs became much more focused. The sound overall was much more, it was more current without totally following a certain trend. So if you listen back to Revenge now, it sounds great now, even still to this day, because they didn't do any of those foolish mistakes where they used a popularized sounding reverb on the drums that makes it to that day, like 1985. This record sounds like 85 because of this. Revenge doesn't have that problem because it just sounds great overall. It'll sound good today, it'll sound good next year, it'll sound great 10 years from now. So that's a big advantage that album has, and that's also why it's such a big drastic change, because Hot in the Shade just sounds completely, like amateur hour compared to Revenge, and sonically, songwriting wise, in every which way. So that in that way, I'm surprised I didn't put it a bit higher on my list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit like 1981 again. In 1989, they had the new contract, so they just threw the kitchen sink at it, but just spent as little money as possible.
Yeah.
So very, very strange, but at least they got a great tour out of it, and that really was a stunning tour. All right, so moving. The top three are really odd. The order that these came out, I'm very surprised. I wasn't too surprised by any of these. But in third place, Shock Horror, Destroyer's transition to Rock and Roll Over on 14 points. That's only slightly ahead of Hits and Revenge. And let's see. Oh, yeah, that's because of me. Yeah, I gave this, this was I think this is one of the biggest dynamic shifts in Kiss's catalog, because it's not one done for experimentation or desperation. It was a transition made from fear.
Mm-hmm.
It was them running away from everything that they had gotten near with Bob Ezrin and the discomfort they felt immediately after feeling the response to Destroyer in early 76 when it came out, because that alienated a large number of original Kiss fans who had come up with the black leather and chrome and having orchestration and boys choirs, acoustic guitars prominent, love Beth, to be perfectly honest, because they were already preparing for Rock and Roll Over before Beth became a hit. So it was running away. It was fear. It was, to a certain extent, cowardice to not want to work with Bob again to see where they could go from there next, like Alice Cooper had. But then again, when you look at Cooper's catalog with Alice Cooper, that had a very limited shelf life as well in terms of its success and the dynamics that had on that, what was initially a band and then what was simply a solo act. So fear. Who else had this one? This would also be Ken.
Yeah, I had it. That's number 3 on my list. Destroyer with its slickness and overproduced, kind of stuff. The orchestrations, the pianos, all that kind of stuff was a big change. And I know Max has mentioned that. That's on my list. That was number 6 on my list, Just to Kill 2 Destroyer. And then going back. So, Rock and Roll Over was a gritty change back to, the rock and roll, straight ahead rock and roll, hard rock style of Kiss that they had, at from the first 3 albums. It was actually a progression. If you took Destroyer out, just say Destroyer never was there ever, in history, and it went from Dress to Kill to Mark's dream. That they just 1976, first part of 1976 is gone anyway. Went from Dress to Kill to Rock and Roll Over. That's I think a decent progression, and it's stylistically they're still rocking, and they're moving forward. Destroyer was a big change, and then so going from that and then back to Rock and Roll Over, it was yes, it was a knee-jerk thing. I'm glad that they did that, because I don't think if you had another Destroyer 2 right after that one, they would have lost even more fans. It would have been over early for Kiss, earlier than it kind of was when, for instance, Dynasty came out later on. So yeah, that was just a major change. I'm glad they did Rock and Roll Over. I'm glad they made that decision. To me, it was a right decision.
Ken approved. Lonnie's not here, and he didn't vote for this one anyway. So, Mark.
Well, I had a number 2, Destroyer to Rock and Roll Over. I mean, I think it's a very big one in my opinion, because Destroyer, like I said 100 times, Destroyer is everything that's wrong. That's the completely wrong album for them. I mean, the whole sound of it. I mean, I've gone through it 100 times. It's just not what they should have done. It just doesn't sound right to me. And Rock and Roll Over is what is Kiss at that time for me. Sure, I mean, bands develop, but this was too much too soon, I think, Destroyer. I mean, I just don't think that they should have did that approach, and Rock and Roll Over was like that warm blanket, after hearing that sort of shocking, frigid cold of Destroyer, you get that nice feel again listening to Rock and Roll Over. I mean, it just wasn't something that they needed at that time. It's just a terrible record. I'm so glad that Rock and Roll Over came in and fixed that damage that was done with that album. I mean, yeah, now they completely piggybacked off it later on, playing so much of it, but that, people got used to it later, and and then but you got to remember, after releasing records that people didn't like Unmasked and Crazy Nights and stuff like that, then all of a sudden Destroyer doesn't seem that bad anymore, but that's the only reason why. I mean, if that wasn't the case, then that still would have stuck out like a sore thumb, and it still does to me. So that to me is a very
all right, Max, you said so. Dress to Kill to Destroyer is just a bigger jump. No? Yes, of course it is. Yes. And that's next on our list. Clearly separated, on 17 points in second place is that change from Dress to Kill to Destroyer. I ranked this as my biggest change in the band's catalog, simply because it was rolling the dice. It was throwing out everything that they knew and turning over their life, their career, their art to someone else's hands to help mold and transform. They had never worked with a real producer. Like Bob Ezrin, a transformative producer who not only can arrange, he can write, he can perform, he can completely reshape your material and your songs. Kerner and Wise were real producers, but Bob is so much more than a producer. Calling him a producer is almost an insult to the tactical toolbox he deploys on every album that he touches. So Kiss go in to doing Destroyer from Dress to Kill, where they're basically doing as few takes as possible, as fast as possible, with a guy who's more interested in smoking dope in the studio, to going to a guy who's slamming down books on the desk and saying it's time for schoolboys. You're going to learn about 7/8 time, and you're going to keep the beat, and I'm going to sit here next to you until you get it right. It was an education in every single way. So huge change. Mark, this was your top pick as well. Probably not for as enthusiastic reasons as mine.
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, Ezrin has done great stuff with other bands. Just with Kiss, he just to me didn't work. And it's just obviously, Dress to Kill I loved. I've always loved the sound of that album. I've always loved the way it turned out. Yeah, maybe he was, but Bogart was smoking a lot of pot and hanging out there. But you know what? I'd rather take in a Bogart, riddled with pot smoke, result than what Destroyer was. I mean, to me, that just was not good. Smoke all the pot you want, buddy. If that's what comes out, then I'd rather have that album than that complete clusterfuck of a record that Destroyer was.
Jeez.
Complete.
It's
garbage.
unbelievable.
I just
No,
don't
it's not
understand
at
what
this
he was
point.
thinking.
No, it's
I don't
not.
understand what he was thinking.
We're
at
still
all.
doing this.
Terrible record, but it is a big change. I mean, the Dress to Kill sounds great, but so does and I'll just go. I'll say this: it does sound good, Destroyer. That sonically, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not what they need at the time. But I'd rather have a great sounding Dress to Kill than a great sounding Destroyer.
I'll be back in 5.
To me, it's just much better result. Dress to Kill. I've always loved that album, and I just think that Destroyer isn't what they should have did, and that's why I think it's the number one biggest change, because it went from great record to all of a sudden like, wow, what the hell is this? And a lot of people thought the same.
Oh, he stopped.
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting.
No, we kind of knew where that one was going. Ken, this is at the bottom of your list, which again is somewhat surprising. I was thinking that I had your list backwards at points when I was looking at this.
No. It was number 6 on mine, but my number 1 I think is the real number 1, but that's for me on my list. But Just to Kill the Destroyer, yes, it was. Yeah, it got slicked up and kind of overproduced. Just to Kill was the most poppiest hard rock of their first 3 albums, and it was kind of going that way. And Ezrin took it obviously a lot further than Just to Kill was. So it was still a big change. It's similar to the change, I guess, of Destroyer going to Rock and Roll Over. I think it's more of a change going from Destroyer to Rock and Roll Over versus Just to Kill the Destroyer. But I don't know. It's kind of, who knows if that's right or wrong. I just think that I don't know. There's nothing else to say about it. I'm not going to go any more on it because Mark pretty much said it all.
Wow. Letting Mark speak for you. There you go. That's dangerous when it comes to Destroyer or Ezrin. Lonnie, you gave this middle of the road, I guess.
I did, because it is a shift. I mean, you listen to Dress to Kill, and it's a rock album, but it's poppy at the same time. And they after the first couple records, they really kind of got it right for the first time how the band should sound on record. And I really enjoy Dress to Kill, but obviously there is a shift though. While I enjoy Destroyer also, you can't deny that there's a shift from one to the next. And in my opinion though, it's still a good shift. It's not so negative as Mark wants it to make it out to be, or Mark believes it to be. I enjoyed Destroyer because I enjoy the big production on it, and maybe it's because I'm a big Alice Cooper guy though too, that I enjoy the big flamboyant production on Destroyer, and Destroyer so was the first album that my brother and I had, so it just means a lot to me. So it is a reason why I'm a Kiss fan. So you can't deny though the shift from how the band is produced on one to the other. The cocaine in the studio to no, this is how it's going to be type of thing. So it's a shift, but in my opinion, it's still a good shift because I enjoy both records.
So, quick tangent. New Alice Cooper, produced by Bob Ezrin. What do you think of that, Lonnie?
Listened to it twice this morning. Enjoy the hell out of it. Enjoy the hell out of it. It's one of Alice's best albums in several years, in my opinion.
Mark?
You might find this actually
Produced by Bob Ezrin, by the way.
No, but honestly, I find I was actually very surprised. I found this very middle of the road for Alice. I was expecting a lot more, especially since he got back with some of the original guys. But I don't know. I think that Detroit record he did before was much better than this. I don't know. It's maybe it'll grow on me. Maybe I need to listen to it more times.
More, yeah.
Right. But on first initial listen, I thought it was not a bad record, but I think I was expecting a lot more, and I find it sort of middle of the road right now.
Yeah, I have a couple of production issues with it where Alice's voice is way too loud in the mix, and you can't hear things separation as much as I think you should. But it had its moments. There are some jump out songs at me that sounded very good, some middle of the road stuff. For a guy who's been doing this 60 years for Alice, I think an outstanding effort. Ken?
Yeah, it was it's a really good effort. It's a well done album. I haven't had time to listen to much of it yet. I need to listen to it more, but I know it's kind of one of those it's a grower kind of album. You got to give it more than one listen. You can't listen, and that even goes with a lot of, back when I was listening to Kiss, you had to listen to it sometimes. For instance, when I remember listening to the first Kiss album, I don't know, I didn't think too much of it when I first listened to it, but you got to listen to it a few times, and then it grabs you. You can really get into it, and you get it. Yeah. So that's what I think how this album is too. So sometimes if you get it, if it's that good on the first, it's not that good. I found that too. It sounds so good, and then maybe it's kind of
really wanes on you, and like, oh, it's not as good.
Then it's like, wait a minute, no, that's really too much. So, and it gets old real quick, right? It doesn't have staying power. So anyway.
Yeah. I really dropped off with Alice after Along Came a Spider. All right, recapping. 7th place, Carnival Souls to Psycho Circus on 4 points. 6th place, Alive 2 Studio to Dynasty on 6 points. 5th place, Asylum to Crazy Nights, 8 points. 4th place, Hits to Revenge. 3rd place, Destroyer to Rock and Roll Over on 14 points. Hits to Revenge is 13 points. 2nd place, Dress to Kill to Destroyer, 17 points, which means the winner by a single point is the transition between Kiss Unmasked and Music from the Elder. Shocker, not.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that much of a shocker, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Because when you see how pop Unmasked is in terms of being kind of a pretty low bar of being out of a clue about their demographic and their audience, going to something else that is even more clueless is not that big of a step. But in terms of going into a concept realm, so this one kept falling down the list for me and ended up right in the middle. It was where did I have 1, 2, 3, 4?
Wow.
4 out of So I kept bumping it down, whereas Ken, you say this is the biggest change or transition in the Kiss catalog.
It was. Yeah, you weren't there. You weren't there, Julian.
Thanks. No, I wasn't. I was listening to the Beatles and John Lennon. Thank you very much.
Which is good. Which is perfectly acceptable for me because I listened to that too. But going from Unmasked and then all of a sudden, this album comes out, The Elder, which I didn't even know the release date, and I saw it in the record store. I was like, what the heck? Anyway, even the cover was a drastic change of that one with no images on it. But I remember putting it on, and it's like, what's going on? It was kind of a head scratcher the first time you listen to that thing. It's like, what's going on here? It's interesting, But it started off with, the Oath on the original U.S. release, and it's like, wow, this is a rocking song. I could see that. Like, I was happy. I was with that. After the Oath, the fanfare or whatever, Just a Boy, all that stuff. And then it's like, whoa, what? This is going in an interesting direction here. But it was a definite turn in style, production for sure, because you got the Bob Ezrin production, and it's just a wild change lyrically. Everything about it is so different from what you would expect from Kiss. You put this on for anybody that doesn't really know Kiss or thinks they know Kiss, and you put it on, they would not say, oh, that's Kiss. They would say, who's this? What group is this?
Yes.
That's why they would not know. They would not know. So it's such a big change. That's why I have a number 1 on my list.
All right.
Next.
Next, yeah. Who is next? That would be Lonnie. You have this the second.
I have it second on my list. It is such a shift. I talked about the transition from Hot in the Shade Revenge, of them being just like kind of like throwing stuff away with no direction to all of a sudden having a direction. Where this one is, there's definitely 2 different directions. They had a direction on Unmasked, and they definitely had a formula of what they wanted the band to sound like. And is it this pop type record to all of a sudden, oh well, that's not working, so we're going to shift to this concept record with totally different. I mean, talk about one direction to another, totally different direction, totally different sound. No Kiss on the cover, a hand on a door knocker. Like we are. That is such a transition for what we want image wise, what we want music wise, everything. And that's why it's number 2 for me, because it is such a shift. It's Kiss really caring what the public thinks about them, and thinking, oh, we'll get it right with this. The public's gonna love this because they're not liking the pop thing. And instead
the
of
critics,
the critics, and instead of going back to their roots and embracing what made them successful, they were more worried about the critics than they were the fans. And thinking, well, this is going to appease the critics, and this is going to get us a 5-star review in magazines and things like that. So, obviously a big shift. I'm in lockstep with Ken here.
Oh, Mark.
Well, it's funny because you
had this on 4
third.
points in 3rd place on your list, just because you had to have Destroyer in the 2 spots as above.
Anything with
his hatred for Destroyer rules.
Well, but the thing is, you guys were saying earlier, like that they were worried about more what the media people thought about them than worrying about what the fans thought about. Well, what fans? By this point, it was pretty much like dwindling fans at this point. So really, they had to probably try to appease somebody that they had a chance of appeasing at this time, because the fan base was going bye-bye at this point. So, I mean, also when I think about it, Unmasked was already such a drastic shift musically for them, where that got rid of a lot of their fan base too. So when I compare it, Unmasked to The Elder, yeah, it's a change, but I don't think it's as shocking as hearing something like Destroyer to Rock and Roll. That's like really like, whoa, it is shocking, and it's mainly shocking, I think, too, because number 1, it's a concept album, which I don't think anybody ever imagined Kiss doing a concept record. That term just doesn't seem to connect with Kiss. You think of like Jethro Tull or other progressive Yes and stuff like that when you think concept album, not Kiss, right? So while it is definitely and obviously a change. I mean, I had a number 3 on my list, obviously, so there is a change that happened that was shocking, but I still don't think it's as big a change. I mean, the poor fan base has already gone through a couple of surprising things. Dynasty, for one, as Ken said, back in the day when that happened. People were surprised. Then Unmasked comes even more popular. People are like, whoa, what the hell's going on? So they were already really almost expecting some sort of shocking thing. And now The Elder comes and it is shocking again. But I think at this point they were probably almost, half expecting. I know a lot of people said that when they heard it, they were like, that was the final straw album for a lot of people. They said, after this, I checked out. I remember hearing a lot of different podcasts. I've been on like Pottered in Hell and all these things. A lot of these people are saying that I checked out when The Elder came. That was the final straw. So it's like almost like at that point, people were already on the fence. This album was the make or break for them, whether they stayed with Kiss from this point on. And I mean, look what happened. They did Creatures after that, which was an amazing album, and people still weren't convinced to come back. It took a couple records, So I still think that it is a change, but I just still don't think it's as drastic at that point. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, come 81 and, Aerosmith's down and out as well. Motley Crue's emerging. I mean, how does a band that's been out, since 72, who's inspired by Slade and The Who, compete with Motley Crue, the new wave of British heavy metal? And again, they got rich and fat and they lost track. I don't feel inspired. I can't write today. Oh, I'm not feeling it. They mid 81, when they've recorded 9 songs, they had 9 songs in the can. Go listen to chapter 4 of Audio Odyssey for exactly where they were at in mid 1981. Yes. And then to just clutch onto that, because David Braun, president of Polygram, that's who they're appeasing, Mark. They're appeasing the ownership. They're appeasing the critics. Oh, we'll show you. We're brilliant, actually. Just you wait and see.
Yeah.
Put on my purple headband.
Did you ever,
my sword.
Did you ever buy an album because the critics, like they give it 5, I remember seeing stuff like a Rolling Stone back. They rate it 5 songs. This is the greatest album. And I go buy the album and I bring it home and I play it. It's like, the hell, this is not 5, this is crap or whatever.
Actually,
so the critics, they were hoping the critics would, to a degree too, I think it's going to be, if they rate it so high, they did so good, that it was going to somehow get the public to buy some more records and buy records.
But it can. I'll give you a perfect example of that. Okay, in '92, I believe it was. There was a magazine out called Meat Magazine, Metal Entertainment Around Toronto. Okay,
Whew, that's a relief.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to be something else.
No. And Martin Popoff was a writer in there, one of the senior writers for that magazine. Was on that? Yeah, Martin Popoff was in that thing, and he wrote an article about a very new band, and he thought the album was absolutely fantastic. I had never heard of this band before, and on his article, I went out and bought it. And to this day, it's one of my favorite records of all time, Dream Theater's Images and Words. I think that if you have a writer that you respect and that you respect his taste in music, yeah, it can work if you try to appease those people. But, the problem is a lot of these writers don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're very, they don't know crap about the bands they're writing about. There's so many times I've read in newspapers, they did like a review of Rush at a concert and they put down the wrong songs that they played in the show. So those are the kind of writers you want to stay away from. But Martin, I've always trusted his opinion on stuff, especially bands I didn't know about. And I think it can work in that way.
I have never, ever, ever purchased an album on the strength of a critical review. I don't think I've ever read a review before buying an album. I buy albums generally from these days is because shit pops up in my YouTube suggestions. The algorithm throws something at me and I'm like, whoa, that's really cool. I want to find out more about them. In the old days, it was rifling through secondhand shops and album covers catching my fancy.
Yeah,
I liked what I liked. I bought the next album by bands that I liked in hopes that I'd like their next album. It didn't always work out that way. Sometimes they put out a Crazy Nights or an Elder, so that or a Just Push Play. and it doesn't always work how you hope it will. But I can't think of reviews that I've read. I generally read critical reviews of bands that I'm not interested in. I'll read a Beyonce review just to see what the critics are saying about a new album coming from someone who I'll never purchase. I may hear a song here or there. I've never purchased a Taylor Swift album, but I've read reviews of many of her
I would
albums.
never do that.
I've not made it through a whole Taylor Swift album yet. I've tried just to keep my mind open on what's going on musically in the world outside the realm of what I generally listen to. So, screw critics in that perspective.
Well, I think that's kind of odd because, I mean, I have a favorite. That was one of my favorite magazines. They wrote about a lot of the bands I loved. They reviewed a lot of the bands I loved. So, to me, if they recommended something, I would take them up on it and check it out. Yeah, sure. It wasn't always 10 out of 10, but a lot of the times they did turn me on to a lot of bands that were like that.
Kerrang reviews was a good one back in the day.
Oh, those were always fun, and I always read the Kerrang reviews, but they never influenced my purchasing. Same with Metal Hammer, same with Raw, Circus, Hit Parader. Again, I'll always love reading reviews. I still do. Again, I'll read a review for a Lou Reed album just to see what contemporaneous thought was on Berlin. Ain't buying it. So, all right, that is the show this week. Thank you to everyone in the comments who's chimed in today. There's been an absolute crazy ton of comments. Max, most of them seem to be by you. So we do appreciate it. We enjoy all of these comments. What are your biggest transition albums in the KISS catalog? Again, when you go to the KISS Gymnasium buffet, there's a lot to choose from. And again, I think it's a real blessing that we actually get to do all these different topics around such a broad catalog, because I'm going to go spin a KISS album this afternoon. I'm not doing any work on anything this weekend, or at least today. And I just want to listen to some music. I may watch a video, still want to watch some Ozzy, and just enjoy music without purpose, just for fun. All right. So that's it for this week. Chime in with your comments wherever you happen to listen to this episode, and make sure that you tune in next week when we're back, because next week we're going to be celebrating, what is it, Ken?
Unplugged.
It's the 30th anniversary of
Holy,
the
30 years
of KISS Unplugged, and these guys do have homework because they're checking out the Unplugged Uncut video, and we've got some cool topics to frame that conversation as we look back at what was a really exciting, it was I guess a pit stop, a pause before the reunion. In between Failure, there was the convention tour, and it was an exciting time because everyone was starting to get online in 1995, and a community was emerging out of the ether. All right, that's it for this week. Thank you for joining us. So from Ken, from Mark, Lonnie, and myself, we will see you next time.
Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the message board and discuss the topics we've broadcast today. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you've listened to this show, and a like would very much be appreciated. We hope you'll join us again, but until then, remember, life's a radio. Turn it up to 10.